Shalom Aleichem. Peace be upon you and welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Shawn. Today I thought we would look at this week's Torah portion, the story from the schedule for this week, which happens to be Numbers chapter 13 through 15, and it deals with the spies being sent into Canaan. And I've always found this story fascinating, but I also feel like it has a way of speaking to today's Christian, today's child of God, because I think in the times that we're living in, that we could encounter a similar attitude. And I'll explain that when we get to that part of the story where the grumbling begins. And then, of course, the curse is pronounced that, hey, those of you who grumbled against me, you're just going to wander and die in the wilderness. And it'll be your children that will go in to the promised land. Let me read you the Torah portion summary from torahportions.org. Here's what it says. The 37th reading from the Torah is called Shelach, an imperative verb that means send out. The portion is also named from the first few words of the second verse, send out for yourselves men, so that they may spy out the land of Canaan. Numbers chapter 13, verse 2. The Torah reading tells the tragic story of how the spies returned with a bad report about the land of promise and influenced the congregation of Israel to rebel against the Lord. Thus God consigned the generation of Moses to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. So that's the story that we're going to read today. I realize you've probably heard it many, many times, but I just ask you to open up your hearts and see if there's a word for you today out of this story. I'm going to read from the Hallelujah Scriptures. If you're unfamiliar, it kind of puts kind of a Hebraic touch to the Scriptures, meaning that it'll use Hebrew words that are there in the original language, specifically the name of God. And so, with that, let's read this story. We got 2 chapters to read today, or actually 3, chapter 13, 14, and 15. Let's begin. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. Send one man from each tribe of their fathers, every one a leader among them. And by the command of Jehovah, Moshe sent them from the wilderness of Paran, all of them men who were heads of the children of Israel. And these were their names: from the tribe of Reuben, Shemua, son of Zakar; from the tribe of Shimeon, Shaphat, son of Hori; from the tribe of Yehuda, Caleb, son of Jephunneh; from the tribe of Issachar, Yigal, son of Yosef; from the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, son of Nun; from the tribe of Benjamin, Palti, son of Rufi; from the tribe of Zebulun, Gadiel, son of Sodi; from the tribe of Yosef; from the tribe of Manasseh, Gadi, son of Shusi; from the tribe of Dan, Amiel, son of Gimali; from the tribe of Asher, Shetur, son of Mikiel; from the tribe of Naphtali, Nahibi, son of Wopshi; from the tribe of Gad, Guel, son of Maki. These are the names of the men whom Moshe sent to spy out the land. And Moshe called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Yahushua. And Moshe sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said to them, go up here into Negev, and go up to the mountains, and see what the land is like, and the people who dwell in it, whether strong or weak, whether few or many, and whether the land they dwell in is good or evil, and whether the cities they inhabit are in camps or strongholds, and whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are forests there or not. And you shall be strong and bring some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the season of the first fruits of grapes. So they went up and they spied out the land from the wilderness of Sin as far as Rahab, near the entrance of Hamath. And they went up through Negev, and they came to Hebron, and Achiman, and Sheshaiah, and Talmaiah, and the descendants of Anak were there. Now Hebron had been built 70 years before Canaan in Mitzrayim, that is to say, Egypt. And they came to the Wadi Eshcol, and cut down from there a branch with one cluster of grapes. And they bore it between two of them on a pole, also pomegranates and figs. That place was called Wadi Eshcol because of the cluster which the men of Israel cut down from there. And they returned from spying out the land after 40 days. And they went and they came to Moshe and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran and Kadesh. And they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they reported to him and said, "We went to the land where you sent us, and truly it flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. But the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are walled and very great. And we saw the descendants of Anak there, too. The Amalekites dwell in the land of Negev, while the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea along the banks of the Arden." And Caleb silenced the people before Moshe and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are certainly able to overcome it." But the men who had gone with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we." And they gave the children of Israel an evil report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone as spies is a land eating up its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw and are the men of great size, and we saw there the Nephilim, sons of Anak, of the Nephilim. And we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we were in their eyes." So there is chapter 13. So Moses sends the spies. Now, these aren't just ordinary men either. These are men who were appointed to be leaders over the tribes, as it tells us in the beginning, right? And he sent men to spy out the land of Canaan, the children of Israel. Send one man each from the tribe, fathers among one, a leader among them. So they go, and they find great fruit. The land truly is flowing with milk and honey. It takes 2 men to bear the grapes. These must have been massive grapes. But they see the children, the sons of Anak there, Nephilim, giants. And of course, I don't buy into the sons of Seth. Nonsense is what I call it. These were clearly giants, and when they say the Nephilim were there, and we were like grasshoppers in their sight, and that would be the case in our own sight, but also in the sights of the giants. That's because they were giant. So the fear that the people feel is warranted. However, we have to remember, these are the people that saw the greatest miracles, right? They saw the plagues of Egypt. They saw the splitting of the Red Sea. And furthermore, they heard the audible voice of God at Mount Sinai when the commandments were given. And so to give in to their fear when they have experienced all of these things of the Lord is unacceptable. And God's anger is certainly going to be kindled. Let's continue. Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel grumbled against Moshe and against Aaron, and all the congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Mitzrayim, that is to say, Egypt, or if only we had died in the wilderness. And why is Jehovah bringing us to the land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should become prey? Would it not be better for us to turn back to Mitzrayim? And they said to each other, let us appoint a leader, and let us turn back to Mitzrayim, that is to say, Egypt. So the people are, please note, the people are grumbling, saying we would have been better off dead in Egypt. We would have been better off if we died in the wilderness, before they've even had a battle. To the point where they're grumbling against God's anointed Moshe, and God's high priest, Aaron, saying, let's appoint our own people and go do what we want and go back to slavery. This is a very serious offense in the eyes of God. Verse 5, then Moshe and Aaron fell on their faces before the assembly of the congregation and the children of Israel, and Yahushua son of Nun, that is to say Joshua, and Caleb son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their garments. And he spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, the land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If Jehovah is delighted in us, then he shall bring us into the land and give it to us, a land which is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Jehovah, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their defense is turned away from them, and Jehovah is with us. Do not fear them. But all the congregation said to stone them with stones, and then the esteem of Jehovah appeared in a tent of appointment before the children of Israel. And Jehovah said to Moshe, how long shall I be scorned by these people? How long shall I not be trusted by them, with all the signs which I have done in their midst? Let me smite them with pestilence and disinherit them, and make of you a nation greater and mightier than they. And Moshe said to Jehovah, then the Mitzrites shall hear it, for by your power you brought these people up from their midst, and they shall say to the inhabitants of this land, they have heard that you, Jehovah, are in the midst of these people, and that you, Jehovah, are seen eye to eye, and that your cloud stands above them, and you go before them in the column of the cloud day and in a column of fire by night. Now if you shall kill these people as one man, then the nations which have heard your report shall speak, saying, because Jehovah was not able to bring this people to the land which he swore to give them, therefore he has killed them in the wilderness. So please note, the esteem of Jehovah shows up in the tent of appointment. And he tells Moses, I'm going to rid myself of these people who grumble against me, and I'm just going to start over with you and make a great nation. But Moses pleads with God. And he's like, look, if you do that, then... And essentially what Moses is saying is, for your own name's sake, don't do that. Because then people will say you weren't even able to fulfill your promise. Continuing on. And now I pray, let the power of Jehovah be great, as you have spoken, saying, Jehovah is patient and of great kindness, forgiving the wicked and the transgression, but by no means leaving unpunished, visiting the wicked of the fathers of the children to the third and fourth generation. Please forgive the wickedness of this people according to your greatness of your kindness, as you have forgiven the people from Mitzrayim even until now. And Jehovah said, I shall forgive according to your word, but truly as I live, all the earth is filled with the esteem of Jehovah, for none of these men who have seen my esteem and the signs which I did in Mitzrayim, that is to say Egypt, and in the wilderness, have tried me now these 10 times, and have disobeyed my voice, shall see the land which I swore to their fathers, nor any of those who scorned me see it. Please note, God is fully aware how many times this has happened, right? They had these 10 times, he says. none of them who have grumbled against me and have seen the signs which I have done, which leaves them without excuse, right, are going to enter into this land. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him and has followed me completely, I shall bring him into the land where he went, and his seed shall inherit it. Since the Amalekites and the Canaanites are dwelling in the valley, turn back tomorrow and depart into the wilderness by the way of the sea of reeds. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, How long shall this evil congregation have this grumbling against me? I have heard the grumbling which are the children of Israel are grumbling against me. Say to them, As I live, declares Jehovah, as you have spoken in my hearing, so I do to you. The carcasses of you who have grumbled against me are going to fall in the wilderness. All of you who were registered according to your entire number, from 20 years old and above. None of you except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Yahushua, son of Nun, shall enter into the land, which I swore I would make you dwell in. But your little ones, whom you have said would become prey, I shall bring in, and they shall know the land which you have rejected. But as for you, your carcasses are going to fall in the wilderness, and your sons shall be wanderers in the wilderness 40 years, and shall bear your whorings until your carcasses are consumed in the wilderness, according to the number of days in which you spied out the land, 40 days, a day for a year, a day for a year. You are to bear your wickedness 40 years, and you shall know my breaking off. I am Jehovah, and I have spoken. I shall do this to all this evil congregation who are meeting against me. In the wilderness they are consumed, and there they die. So please note, God says nobody's inheriting this land 20 years and up. And since you grumbled and said, oh no, our children are going to be consumed and our children are going to die, and Jehovah has brought us out to why we would have been better off to die in Egypt, he says, the two people who didn't rebel, Joshua and Caleb, they're going to enter in. And the children whom you said would not survive, they're going to enter in. Now, a connection I always try to make, because I could see this happening in our day. I imagine that if God sent a deliverer, we'll just say to the United States, to lead out all of his people before judgment falls from the sky, I could see the people who, even though they were, even though you're being poisoned, even though you're being constantly lied to and propagated, and you're literally paying about 70% in taxes at this point if you calculate every form of tax that you pay. At some point in the wilderness, the people would long for the comforts of America. Remember when we could just sit on the couch and watch TV? You know, remember when we could buy as much processed monkey grub as we could find? Right? Because that's all that you've known. The children, like the little ones of these people, they've only known the wilderness, by and large, and they've only known what it's like to be cared for by God. They've been eating the manna that appears every morning from heaven. They've seen the miracles. All they've known is the protection and sovereignty and oversight of the Lord. They are not tainted by that longing for the comforts of Egypt as the older generation is. I honestly think that's the condition of the older generation here in America, for the most part. So used to the comforts that even though terrible things are being done And there's things happening even to us that most of us don't even realize out of ignorance. We'd still long for the comforts. And that's what's happening with these people. And so they're children who've only known a life where God is the sole focus and the sole provider. They won't be afraid when they come of age to take on the giants and enter the promised land. Let's continue here. We've got a few more verses to finish up chapter 14, and then 15 is not too long. Let's finish up here. And the men whom Moshe sent to spy out the land returned and made all the congregation grumble against him by bringing an evil report of the land. Even those men who brought the evil report about the land died by the plague before Jehovah. Of those men who went to spy out the land, only Yahushua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jehoshaphat, remained alive. And when Moshe spoke these words to all the children of Israel, the people mourned greatly. And they rose up early in the morning, and they went up to the top of the mountain, saying, See, we have indeed sinned, but we shall go up to the place which Jehovah had spoken of. But Moshe said, Why do you now transgress the command of Jehovah, since it does not prosper? Do not go up, lest you be smitten by your enemies. For Jehovah is not in your midst, because the Amalekites and the Canaanites are there before you, and you shall fall by the sword, because you have turned away from Jehovah. Jehovah is not with you. But they presumed to go up to the mountaintop. But neither the ark of the covenant of Jehovah nor Moshe left the camp. So the Amalekites and the Canaanites who dwelt in the mountain came down and smote them and beat them down, even to Hormah. And that's how chapter 14 ends. So the people, they grumble, they refuse, they're cowardly. And they say they wish they would have died in Egypt. They take up stones to stone God's anointed. They say they're going to appoint new leaders and return to Egypt. Then when God tells them, that's it, you're not going to inherit, they do a form of repentance where they're like, okay, we're going to turn back, but now God's not with them. You see, you can't always just say, I'm sorry, I want to obey, and it'll all work out for you. You have to obey when God is with you, when He's giving you the command to do something. And of course, so they try to take on the Amalekites, and they get slaughtered, basically. Chapter 15. I think it's interesting also to note, I'm not going to make a big thing out of it, but the scriptures go out of their way to make sure you know that neither Moshe, God's representative, nor the Ark of the Covenant left the camp. And so it's almost like a picture of them going on their own, making their own way, trying to make their own decisions. They don't have the Ark of the Covenant. They don't have God's representative. Doesn't work out. Chapter 15. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you have come into the land of your dwellings, which I am giving you, and you make an offering by fire to Jehovah, a burnt offering or slaughtering, to accomplish a vow or a voluntary offering in your appointed times, to make a sweet fragrance to Jehovah from the herd or the flock, then he who brings near his offering to Jehovah shall bring near a grain offering of 1/10 part of fine flour mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil, and 1/4 of a hin of wine as a drink offering. You prepare with burnt offering or the slaughtering for each lamb. For the ram you prepare it as a grain offering, 2/10 parts of fine flour mixed with 1/3 of a hin of oil. And as a drink offering you bring 1/3 of a hin of wine as a sweet fragrance to Jehovah. And when you prepare a bull as a burnt offering or as a slaughtering to accomplish a vow, or as a peace offering to Jehovah, then shall be brought with the young bull a grain offering of 3/10 parts of fine flour mixed with 1/2 hin of oil. Bring as a drink offering a half hin of wine, as an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Jehovah. This is what is done for each bull, for each ram, or for each lamb or young goat, according to the number that you prepare. You do for each one according to their number. Let all who are native do so with them, and bringing near an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Jehovah. And when a stranger sojourns with you, or whatever is among you, you throughout your generations, and would make an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Jehovah, as you do, so he does. One law is for you of the assembly, and for the stranger who sojourns with you, a law forever throughout your generations. As you are, so is the stranger before Jehovah. One Torah, one right ruling, is for you and for the stranger who sojourns with you. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you come to the land which I bring you, then it shall be, when you eat of bread of the land, that you present a contribution to Jehovah. Present a cake of the first of your dough as a contribution of the threshing floor. You present it. Of the first of your dough you are to give to Jehovah a contribution throughout your generations. And when you sin by mistake, and do not do all these commandments which Jehovah has spoken to Moshe, and all that Jehovah has commanded you by the hand of Moshe from the day Jehovah gave command and onward throughout your generations, then it shall be, if it is done by mistake, without the knowledge of the congregation, that all the congregation shall prepare one young bull as a burnt offering, as a sweet fragrance to Jehovah, with the grain offering as a drink offering according to the right rulings, and one male goat as a sin offering. Then the Kohen shall make an atonement for all the congregation of the children of Israel, and it shall be forgiven them, for it was by mistake, and they shall bring their offering, an offering made by fire to Jehovah, and their sin offering before Jehovah for their mistake. And it shall be forgiven all the congregation of the children of Israel, and the stranger who sojourns in their midst, because all the people did it by mistake. And if a being sins by mistake, then he shall bring a female goat, a year old, as a sin offering. And the Kohen, that is to say the priest, shall make atonement for the being who strays by mistake. And when he sins by mistake before Jehovah, to make an atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. For him who makes a mistake there is one Torah, both for him and who is native among the children of Israel, and for the stranger who sojourns in the midst. But the being who acts defiantly, whether he is native or a stranger, he reviles Jehovah, and that being shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of Jehovah, and has broken his covenant. That being shall be certainly cut off, his wickedness is upon him. And while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moshe and to Aaron and to the congregation, and they put him under guard, because it had not been declared what should be done to him. And Jehovah said to Moshe, The man shall certainly be put to death. And all the congregation stoning him with stones outside the camp. And all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him with stones, and Jehovah commanded Moshe, and he died. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, to make seats on the corners of the garments throughout their generations, and to put blue cord in the seat of the corners. And it shall be to you a seat, and you shall see it, and shall remember all the commands of Jehovah, and shall do them, and not search after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you are whoring, so that you remember and shall do all my commands, and be Kodesh unto your Elohim. I am Jehovah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, that is to say Egypt, to be your Elohim. I am Jehovah your Elohim. And that is the end of chapter 15. That is the end of today's study. So we have this story of the spying out of the land and the disobedience and the tragic story. And they spied out the land for 40 days, and for each day they were given a year of wandering until they died in the wilderness. 1 day for each, or 1 year for each day, 40 years. And then, of course, it ends with, how to handle burnt offerings and things like that when you sin by mistake. You make an unconscious error. Aren't you glad that we have a Savior, the Lamb of God, the final sacrifice, the final atonement for sins, and that we don't have to do that sort of thing anymore? God takes sin very serious, and he still does to this day. And we've been talking a lot about the casualness towards sinful behavior. God commanded the Israelites to make the seats that we read about at the end, to put at the four corners of their garments. And the seat was a reminder to obey God's commands. I pray that you have been blessed by today's study. Thank you for listening. Peace and grace be with all of you. And until next time, God bless.